I guess my most memorable career moment was really getting hired for Epic in 1992. That was like a life-changing moment for me. I worked at the phone company, oddly enough, for 13 years. And I decided, I stumbled into the record business because my best friend at the time, she's still one of my best friends, her father was Charles Stepney, and he was a producer for Earth, Wind, and Fire. So this was like, in the 70s when I was in grammar school, we used to go to her house and Philip Bailey would be there, Larry Dunn and Maurice White. They'd be in her basement, rehearsing or singing, getting music. And so we heard a lot of hits coming out of that basement, like Reasons, That's the Way of the World. And I was just like a part of that family. So that was kind of my entree into the music business. But when I started working as an adult, I got a job with Illinois Bell. Coincidentally, who got me my job, or I shouldn't say she got it, because I had to take a test. I had to pass the test to work there. So I passed the test. But coincidentally, who helped me get that job was a woman named Charles Etta O'Neill. Charles Etta O'Neill is the grandmother of Chance the Rapper. And I used to babysit his mother, Lisa, when we were shorties together. I'm a little older than Lisa, but, and then it's like my whole life has always been somehow revolved around music, or, people just always comes back to music. And so I worked at the phone company for 13 years, and then a friend of mine told me you should really look into becoming a promotion rep because you have the personality for it. I didn't even know what that job was, but I met Kirkland Burke and John Hall Jr. through the Stepney family, and I found out kind of what they did, and I had another friend that worked at GCI at the time, Larita De La Serna, and she was actually the one who really was kind of pushing me toward getting in the music business. That's when I found out, and I was like in my late 20s, that I had a hustle in me, because I never really had, I just worked. I didn't know I was a hustler. So I started working for different labels. I started going to clubs at night, taking records. I used to go to retail stores, getting those windows, hang posters. I did, took pictures. The first campaign I worked was for Juice, the movie Juice. And I did this whole campaign around the city of Chicago. I was going to every retail stores, Barney's, Fletcher's, Nellie's, Coop's Records, all these record stores. And I would, hang posters, give them, product to give away, not product, but flyers, stuff that you gratis gifts to give when the people would buy product. And I just kind of worked my way in the record, on that side with working clubs. And then I began to get a reputation of, you could give Cathy, $100 and she'll go to 5 clubs for you and get your records out, on Saturday night. Because I wasn't scared. I'd go to the west side, south side, wherever. And I got to know all the DJs at the time. At that time, it was Frenchie, Hudson. So then I met Jay Allen at CRX, Pink House at HRP, all these various college stations. We go to Malcolm X, Evanston, Northwestern had a college station. And so I would take, I was working like Motown and MCA at work. I was working for like 3 or 4 different labels, and people would call me to work records on the weekends. So every night, every weekend, I was out hustling, getting these records played, and I remember one night, which was very memorable, at Chick Rick's over here.
Let people know what Chick Rick's is.
Chick Rick's was another club in Chicago that was really big. They had like 3 rooms of music. They had like a hip hop room, R&B room, it was like Chick Rick's was, the shit at that time. And so there was one particular night I was out and this guy came up to me. He said, "Who are you? I see you talking to DJ." And I said, "Oh yeah, I'm Cathy Carroll. I'm out here, getting delivering vinyl to these various DJs and talking to him about the project." So it was a guy named Don Eason. And he said, "Oh yeah, I'm a VP at Epic Records. I want to hire you. You want to move to Memphis and work for me?" And I looked at him, I said, "I am not moving to Memphis, Tennessee, but thank you." That night, also that night in Chicorix was Russell Simmons, and he was really cool. And I got to meet him, and he was like, "Okay, I see you out here doing your thing," but I didn't talk to him because I was busy trying to get my records played, and I didn't know really who these people were. So I was just out there just trying to do my job. And so that was kind of like my first meeting with people who were upper, in working for the record business. And so anyway, so I worked, and then I began to get interviews with various labels. And so I started interning with Motown Records with James Cochran and the late James Cochran and Pat Edwards. And then from there, Chuck Arrington was working, he was an MCA rep, and he really needed help. He had a ton of records. He was working Gladys Knight, Patti LaBelle, BBD. MCA was really hot at that time. So I would come, I worked afternoons at the phone company, so I would come and work for MCA out in Itasca, Illinois, which was probably a 50-mile drive, but I would go work for Chuck, and I began to call program directors, and he would tell me what to say, how to work the records or whatever, and try to get the records onto the radio stations and all that. So I began to build relationships with various program directors. And then the guy who ran the street team at MCA at the time was Brute Bailey. And so Brute Bailey, he really liked me, and he said, "Cathy, I feel you out here." So MCA hired me. That was probably really my first job. MCA hired me as their street rep, and I worked BBD Poison was one of the records that I worked in the clubs, at that time, and I got a plaque for that. That was my first plaque. I was so excited. So, so I worked all these records in the clubs, and then other labels started to kind of notice me. So I did interview with about, I'm just gonna say 6 labels. One of them was like MC Hammer's label. But also like Def Jam. It was quite a few labels. So I really and I was told, "You're not going to get a job in the record business because you're too fat. They'll never hire anybody with your weight problem." And I was like, "Really? Please, I'll outwork any of y'all. I don't care." But I just kept pursuing, and that's, God showed me, if you really believe in yourself and believe in something, if you keep doing it and pursuing it, you will eventually get to it, but you had to keep pressing. So I had gotten to a point where I said, "Well, I'm done with all these interviews. I'm just going to stay at the phone company." At that point, I was making good money, and I was kind of, wearing myself thin, And I said, "If I don't get this job with Epic Records, I'm going to forget it." And I was told, "Oh, they'll never hire you, because of your weight. And they have all these big artists. They have Michael Jackson and Luther Vandross, and they'll never hire you." So I was like, "Okay, well, all I could do is try." So I went to my interview. I took my little Juice book that I had collected and showed them all the work I had done with Juice. They knew the success of that project. And I just told them, "Look, I'll hustle," and a few program directors had vouched for me. And in October of 1992, Epic Records hired me. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was like, "What?" You know how you hear no so much, when you finally get a yes, you're like, "What?" It's unbelievable. And that was a life-changing job for me, working for Epic. And I was there for 13 years. People don't last that long at labels. So Epic is, Sony label, and I worked with a lot of artists. The first record I worked at Epic Records was Sade, No Ordinary Love. And that was like, my first #1 record. And that record was just incredible. It was a great record, and that album was incredible. And I felt incredibly blessed to be working there. And I loved working for Epic. And then I worked with Luther Vandross and took him around to do radio. We used to go to Johnson Building. We go to Oprah, Babyface. He was on Epic. We did a lot of interviews again with Oprah, with Johnson Publishing, Jet Magazine, Ebony, Mr. Johnson. We had lunch with him at the Johnson Building. Those are really, iconic times that you don't think about. You walk into the Jet Building and here's this big thing of Luther Vandross, Babyface or whatever, and it was really incredible. We had a party once for Luther Vandross at Oprah's restaurant, was the Eccentric. And we flew program directors in from all over the country, and they got to meet Luther, have dinner, and it was just, that was another really memorable time. And then we broke Brownstone. They were just an incredible vocalist group. I mean, to this day, I turn on the radio, I hear Brownstone. Another group I worked with was Groove Theory. We broke that record. Tell Me, incredible. I love Amel LaRue to this day. She was just awesome to work with, just wonderful. And I really felt like, I wish her career had maybe gone a little far because she's just an incredible artist. I worked, and then toward the end of my career, I worked with B2K. They were great. In fact, if they come to town, I see them to this day. I love them. 3LW. Adrian and Notori. I'm just so proud of Notori. When I look and see her on television, she's just really doing it big. She's such a big actress. And Adrian is married to Israel Houghton, who, now I'm working gospel music. So that's another funny story. I'll get back to that. But yes, I worked with a lot of artists, helped to, enhance a lot of careers. And it was really a pleasure and an honor.